Everyone. In case you're not familiar, my name is Morgan Mudge. I am the vice president here at TouchPoint. I kind of concentrate on our giving and generosity initiatives around here, so that is very near and dear to my heart. It's kind of how I came back to the church and to the Lord a little later in life. So I'm very, very passionate about this topic today. Brad, who I have the pleasure to have on today. I'm pretty excited because he's going to be in town, so I get to have coffee with him tomorrow as well. But Brad is the founder and president of Ministry Essentials. He's been helping churches with generosity for over 23 years. Is that right, Brad? 23 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Coaching churches and all things giving and generosity, 23 years. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think we've known each other for, it's got to be getting close to 10 years now, even.
Yeah.
Many of you that do know me know that I love talking giving and generosity. And I'll say there's very few people out there that I just shut up and listen to around this topic. Brad is at the top of that list. So this is going to be fun and informative conversation. If anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. We can hopefully get to them at the end. But very much looking forward to it. So let's just dive in. Brad, the name of this webinar was Church Giving 2025, What to Expect and How to Inform, Inspire, and Equip for Giving that Exceeds Your Budgeted Income. That last little bit kind of caught my eye. Giving beyond our budgeted income projections, that has my attention because as you know, and everybody on this call knows, we're pretty good or pretty careful at how we budget. And usually church budgets even leave some room for the Holy Spirit to increase that a little bit. So tell me about that with churches knowing how to budget. How can we still take away some things today that can even beat what's budgeted?
Good. Watching it as an executive pastor for several years at a large church, did the budget thing, and how do you track all that? And coaching executive pastors in churches, it's always a dynamic to figure out what's our budget. Churches tend to sweat out the 3%, 4% bump in the year. Where's it going to come from? We have a balloon payment on our note. We have inflation, increased payroll costs. And sometimes there's a faith element. We're going to go up 10 or 12% a year. Those budget increases tend to rest upon tried and predictable rhythms within a church and generosity. If we do these normal routine things, offering moments and quarterly statements, and then maybe a vision series and maybe even a stewardship series, that there are certain boxes that get checked and they don't necessarily increase giving because these are tactics that are safe and not necessarily, you can feel pretty good about checking the box and moving on. But finding the churches that take intentionality and purposeful steps to engage their congregants in biblical stewardship and normalizing giving on several levels, that increasing the revenue for the year 10, 15, 20%. Had several conversations with churches last week and this week where we're anticipating a bump of 15 to 30%. If going through some different rhythms, not a capital campaign, but general.
I was going to ask that's not in the campaign.
No, this is raising free cash flow or additional giving for the general budget. Capital campaigns are doing just fine. I've had in 2024, I had some of the most successful capital campaigns I've had in 23, 24 years of doing this. That's a whole, we may jump into that later. But the main idea is a church can have more influence over the top line revenue than they think. And if they take some certain steps in priorities, you can expand your regular giving.
Okay. One of the things you and I have talked about in the past is churches knowing their givers and how it's, without putting words in your mouth, becoming more vital. Let's talk a little bit about that and like current giving patterns and kind of what you're seeing in giving patterns and knowing your givers in 2025 and how maybe that's changed over the last year or 2 years even.
Great question. The awareness of givers is shifting fairly quickly because for decades, church givers were very much alike. Now, people got paid twice a month. The income disparities weren't nearly as great. You've always had a few folks that had a lot of money, capacity to give, and folks that didn't have much to give at all. But generally, that middle group was pretty fat. Over the last decade plus, the segmentation of the giver base has radically shifted, and that's where we want to know about the givers. So the three primary audiences, Morgan, would be those that have higher capacity to give, and generally they tend to be from 6 to 8% of your total givers. Sometimes they go much higher than that, but these are folks that have higher, larger financial resources from which to give. They have assets, they have appreciated stocks, they have a greater free cash flow in their household income, and there's far greater availability. A trend in 2024 was that giving generally was stable or increased, but for those churches that saw increase in giving, most of it came from folks that had higher capacity to give. Those in that category have had a very good couple of years, financially, professionally, and it looks like it's going to stay that way in 2025. Therefore, know your giver is how is it that we engage that higher capacity household and disciple them, not necessarily fundraise from them, but disciple them and invite them into a lifestyle of abundant generosity, prioritizing the church, which is a big deal. In a conversation with a client 2 weeks ago, their top giver was invited by the major university in town west of the Mississippi, corporate, the school jet, and to go look at a facility on another campus. And the whole idea was, would you pay for this on our campus? And the pastor and executive pastor were scratching their head and saying, hey, this gal's giving $75,000 a year, but they're about ready to give $1 million, $2 million to something that is unrelated to the church. So it's very frustrating. But how is it that you shift that and inspire and inform and equip so that that major giver is more inclined to give the larger gift to the church and a smaller gift to something outside of the church? So audience number one is the major giver. Audience number two would be the households generally 2,400 to 10,000 annually. This group tends to be shrinking, interestingly, by percentage, because more people have higher incomes that are giving $10,000 and above. But this is a group, Morgan, that I see under more stress. These are households that give out of cash flow. Their margins are pretty thin. Where, hey, I talked to a parent last week that said their grocery bill is $900 a month now because their kids are getting older, food costs are up. It is extremely challenging to invite them to give more because they don't have those margins. But to approach it from a discipleship standpoint, a pastoral care standpoint, there are ways to bump up that group. But that particular group is struggling financially, and we're seeing some data economically that would suggest that there's some headwind in the economic system. That's a group, though, that's your core giver group. They're giving you $7,000, $8,000 a year. There are more of those people. They really add into the budget and to the income.
What percentage of church revenue do you normally see from that segment?
The top giver segment is anywhere from 25 to 40%. Okay. And then you're adding that second segment, which is going to be 25 to 30%. Usually those first two segments are 70 to 80% of the entire church income. Everybody else is in under 2,400 a year. And that can be as much, I did an analysis earlier today, a church that has several thousand givers, but 64% or so are under $2,400 a year. And most of those are under $500 a year. So what do you do with that? They're willing to give, they're in, but they either don't know about biblical stewardship, they're not informed about how all this works, they're not inspired. What's the church story, and how do I give? How does this work? For years, we've had the offering plate, and very few people do the offering plate anymore. At least we had that moment in worship where there was a direct connection to giving. We've even lost that. So the three audiences, Morgan, are the top givers, major givers, 10,000 and above. And I'm even starting to measure 25,000 and above annually because I'm seeing those kinds of numbers. And then 2,400 to 10,000 and below 2,400. Each group requires a different approach, which if you're a pastor or executive pastor or an administrator, I don't have that kind of time. Can we just put it in the email? Can we just make an announcement in worship? The principle is if you speak to everyone the same way, you really speak to no one. A major giver who's 62, kids are out of the house and has significant net worth or free cash flow is asking different questions than somebody who's 28 with two kids under the age of 4, or somebody who's 42 and they're hauling kids all over to athletic practice and music practice, and they're lucky to feel like they're going to make it to church on a regular basis. So how is it that we craft the communication so that we engage them biblically, spiritually, pastorally, and inform, inspire, and equip them to grow in the grace of giving? You ask, what are the trends in 2025? I think it's good news, at least for the first 2 quarters. Predictions are worthless most of the time, but 2024 ended strong for many churches. It was a good year financially. I've had very few churches that said they didn't meet budget, a few that really exceeded budget, and most were okay, even after a very strong December. But that seems to be the pattern of what's going to happen in the first couple quarters of 2025, where if I'm looking to invest time to disciple givers, I'm really going to make sure I'm focusing and engaging appropriately those folks that have higher capacities to give, especially if you're heading into a capital campaign. Usually right now, 70% of the capital campaign commitments are going to come from a small group of people, which is the highest I've ever seen in 24 years. But here's the real challenge, Morgan. We don't know where 2025 is going to go. So don't just trust that it's going to work out okay and ride it out. There's so many things that proactively a pastor, a board, an executive pastor, or business administrator can do to elevate giving. That I just was working with a client earlier this week where it looks like we're going to be able to bump up regular giving. The goal is 30% above budget for the year, and lay in the tracks to make that happen. So proactive church that informs, inspires, and equips will be able to increase giving in 2025.
Got it. I talk a lot about kind of giving pathways, everything, how you onboard people, how you move them, the journey, all that kind of stuff. What do you see for giving pathway for most churches?
Like for churches or individuals?
Well, how do successful churches create good pathways for individuals?
It's starting by having a pathway. The default is, hey, you're supposed to tithe and give to the church, whether it's a new member class or discovery class. There's this sense of you're supposed to give 10% to the church, and whether there are 4 different theological views of the tithe, primary theological views of the tithe, it's all over the map. And most givers either are not aware of it, or they ignore it, or they come up with their own calculation for that. Therefore, a pathway, Morgan, is to normalize understanding that God owns everything, and that we act and respond to the grace gift of God, and getting that core anchor in people's hearts and heads is a really good place to begin there. And then defining what it is. What is it that we believe around here? I was with a group last week, large church, historic church, and it was with their board and executive team. And I said, how do you guys define it around here after 5 decades? And nobody had an answer. It was we know it when we see it kind of a thing. And like, what your data is all over the place. Define it, to create a definition of stewardship, define it, and invite people to take steps and become a first-time giver, become a recurring giver, become a consistent giver, a priority giver, and having people tell stories. I was with a fantastic group yesterday, and several of us told our giving stories, and they were amazing, but all different.
Yeah.
And the room was dialed in, and some started giving well into later life. Others learned as a kid. It's neat to hear the telling, giving stories and modeling for people what it's like, and being consistent in telling what that pathway is. You got to start someplace. First time giver to the church, and then become a consistent giver, become a priority giver, and creating those buckets and stops along the way, not just some kind of a generic, hey, around here we tithe. And most of the data would suggest, when I do giving data for churches, if a church is really heavy on the tithe or way looser on the tithe, interestingly, the data doesn't differ that much.
Okay.
It's, hey, you guys teach it, but you look at the data, maybe 5% of your givers are behaving like you're teaching. Why is that? And it's not for lack of teaching, but it's a lack of creating a culture and moving people along that giving pathway.
So one of the things you said, and it's always been one of my favorite things to talk about, is stories. Stories are so impactful. I believe if a church can tell a good story around generosity, it carries so much weight. But because of that, we have to look at motivation. And so what is motivation for giving that you see with a lot of churches or households? And then do you see those motivations changing over time?
Yes, that's the whole point of a generosity journey or a giving pathway, is that you grow in spiritual maturity and the motivations tend to grow with you. The first-time giver may say, boy, this is exciting. It's a group of people I love. I'm starting to get a grip on who God is. I'm really going to take a risk here and give for the first time. Now, how do I do that? I was doing an analysis for a church. It took me 25 clicks, Morgan, to complete the first-time gift. It was like, very few people are about a first-time givers are going to ride that out for 25 clicks.
25 is high.
Yeah, it really is. It got to the point of, is it me? Am I just that much of an idiot that I can't figure this thing out? But no, it was a legit 25 clicks through all that. But so they're nervous and trying it out, all the way to the mature giver. A couple stories that I heard yesterday where my spouse and I committed to this 30 years ago in our marriage, and here's how God has worked. We've never looked back. And even today, and this is where that maturity level comes in, we're choosing to reduce our lifestyle so that we can give more. We are choosing to, rather than say, and as I've heard several times, not original to me, rather than, God, how much do you want me to give? It becomes, how much do you want me to keep? So that they're changing that lifestyle so they can invest in. So that motivation piece is key, but it sometimes takes years. It sometimes takes months. It's how God works in the heart, and how a church invites people into that journey.
So you've been doing this for 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
How has culture shifted around giving patterns?
Wow, that's probably a 5-series podcast to figure out on the giving shifts.
We need to do a 3-hour Rogan style for that one.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get invited to join him on that one.
There you
go. The first shift comes in generational. This has been around for several years here, where the older generations, the boomers, give out of loyalty, they give out of duty. This is what we do. And as each subsequent generation has lost that loyalty, it's not an automatic. Used to, churches were an automatic gift from most people, and now it is not automatic. So there's a generational shift but no matter where they are in the generation, if they have an encounter with God as relates to the character of God, giving will tend to follow that. It's not, hey, you have to wait till you're 45 before you figure out how to be a mature giver. Maybe the amount that you give changes, but the generational piece, though, you can have that stewardship moment no matter what the age is. The first shift is in generational. The second shift comes in the building bigger barns syndrome, where our culture is, we've always been that way, but there's with Amazon delivery and instant buying and all the things that are there, that there is a tendency to increase lifestyle to keep up with the culture. We have so many more choices, so many more options with online consumerism. So there's that economic, how we play the economic game as people has shifted significantly with that. Third shift is what I would call generational transference, where parents really don't know how to teach their kids about generosity. Giving USA data point, a few others now say that less than 50% of American households give anything charitably.
Say that.
Think about that. Less than 50% of American households give anything charitably. Nothing. No Salvation Army, no Red Cross. They may do a GoFundMe, but that doesn't count as a charitable contribution. Charitable dollars are up because high net worth individuals are giving larger chunks of dollars. In the last 15 months, Morgan, in church work, I've had at least 7 gifts over $2 million. And it's pretty rare to see a gift at that level, but just in the last 15 months, I've had 7. And that's a big gift for a church. Maybe not so much to a large ministry organization, but to a church, that's a pretty big gift in that.
So how does that compare to, even a couple of years ago? Are you seeing those large gifts still continue to increase?
Yeah, getting larger gifts, that's always been part of general giving and capital campaign or giving project. The amounts are bigger.
Okay.
The stock market's up, cryptocurrency is up, assets are up, people are, their base from which to give for a slice of a church congregation, they're able to give more and not impact lifestyle, or they're motivated to give to kingdom causes in that. But there's the generational transference. We don't really know how to teach our kids about finances, let alone giving with that. I was a conversation with a family member last week, and a 13-year-old then was, what's a checkbook? And the mom said, I think we got one of those around here someplace. And we all know that checkbooks are really a thing of the past here. But kids don't know how to give, and teaching biblical generosity to the next generation is a fantastic step for a church to take in 2025. So in how you give, asset valuation to give, I'm still amused and saddened by folks that are business people, successful in the marketplace, and they have no idea they can give stock as an appreciated asset gift. It's a shocker to them. So that's part of the equipping equation of, hey, you can do this and it's okay. You're not going to go to jail, and your church will benefit, and you'll get the tax write-offs on it. So a lot of changes, Morgan, in the giving landscape.
Well, let me use that as a jumping off point. There's stock, crypto you mentioned, but what are some practical things that the local church can do to foster that culture of generosity, among the congregation?
First, is to remind what we chatted about a few minutes ago, is to define what it is. What are you talking about here? What is biblical generosity? What do we believe about that here in our church? And to simplify that, to put that in really bite-sized questions or statements so that a 6th grader can hear it, see it, read it, and understand it. Very simplistic, very straightforward. So first, define it, what it is. Secondly, don't be afraid to talk about it. There's a a characteristic of many church leaders that said, we don't talk about money around here. We don't want that to get in the way of somebody in their faith step. We don't want to seem like we're showing favoritism. I would suggest that that's a missed opportunity. People talk about money every day. Marriages, number one reason for divorce, finances, that we're talking about money. I've overheard a couple conversations today about investments and up and down, and they're sharing their whole private, personal world out here for everybody to hear. With that, it's very much a cultural piece to talk about money. So I would suggest it borders almost on pastoral malpractice to ignore it. I was also intrigued just in how pastors try to, or boards especially, try to dance around all that. But people talk about money every day, and they're curious. Especially, I'm seeing more and more people who are not church, maybe not yet Christians, or returning to faith. They're desperate to know what's going on here. Many churches are growing in the younger families, single parent, intact home. They're showing up in droves in churches, and for many of them, their financial world's a mess. And how is it that we engage them and help them to live as a Christ follower and with sound financial practices, and then embrace biblical stewardship and all that? So there's normalizing the conversation in the church about money is a key step in the culture. And then normalizing the conversation through stories, through communication to givers. And it goes back to that segmentation of the giver base. You talk to people who give at higher income levels, not from a favoritism perspective, but from a discipleship perspective. You talk and engage with them in a different way. Working with a client, we're gathering certain groupings of givers together for vision casting, and there was an overnight retreat for some who identified with the gift of giving and who are giving generously to the church, and they sent out the email invitation. And I thought, well, a week or so, we'll send out another one, and we'll eventually get everything filled up. It sold out in 48 hours. People jumped on that. Hey, we want to figure this stuff out about stewardship. We want to hear the vision of the church. We want to hang out with the pastor. What can we do? How can we increase our giving? How can we dive in and move the mission forward here? They had a couple of their, some passionate people around giving to the church got aced out of that thing. So there was some damage control of, can't you find a room for us? Like, nope, we are totally sold out. But that it goes to show more. There's an energy, a curiosity about faith and finances. If you're not talking to your congregants about faith and finance, other people are. Other organizations, they know how to they know how to drop direct mail in this horrible way to raise money, but they know how to find your people. Or other ministry organizations, they're engaging, talking, vision casting, and investing in the heart and soul of your people. And your silence sends a signal that you don't really care, or it's not a big part of the pastoral or spiritual life of the church.
I love that. I always joke, I've only moved a couple times as an adult, but every time I do, my first piece of mail at my new house is always my alma mater. So with that solicitation, I don't know how they get it so quick, but it's impressive. And just talking about, people are getting hit up from a lot of different organizations. And
I did some interviews last week with some for a client in private, anonymous, confidential, and one guy teared up. He said, "I've been going to churches for over 25 years. This is the first church that ever sent me a handwritten thank you note and said thank you." Well, that's yay for the church that he's in and that I have the privilege of working with, but boo for all the other churches that assumed and presumed upon that couple as a giver. What a missed moment. And you could tell it stung. It hurt. It hurts and stung.
So that's a big big misstep, by those past churches. What other big mistakes do you see churches regularly do, and how can we as a collective group avoid them?
Yeah. The first is to ignore biblical stewardship in the church beyond the normal routines, because churches have a built-in advantage. You meet, people give. It's not like a nonprofit that doesn't see their giver base every week. We have a built-in advantage of seeing
52 times a year to talk to them,
or 24 times a year, depending upon the rate that they're going. So you're fine. Most churches are fine if you want to skip along at 2 to 5% a year. But I would say that's a mistake, because people are hungry for biblical stewardship, and they would love to be generous to their church if they were invited, informed, inspired, and equipped to do so. Second mistake is not understanding giver segmentation. I'll reinforce that. The one size fits all. We will tell them from up front. We send out the weekly email. Here's where you are with our budget. Nobody really cares where you are with your budget. That's not a thing. We look at this as if people care about the transactions around the church rather than the transformational nature of the gospel and the church mission and vision. I would suggest a third mistake is looking at this from a transactional standpoint and ignoring the transformational standpoint, the spiritual vibrancy and health that comes from normalizing biblical stewardship and communicating vision around that. Fourth mistake is not teaching it, ignoring it. Some pastors will say, I'll teach it if it comes up in the text. But that I would suggest that's borders on unkind, because finances are such an issue for most families. Why would we not pastorally address that in a kind way? And so that would be another misstep. Board and staff alignment issues are another one. Let's make sure that the board and pastor are in sync about this. I feel, Morgan, for pastors and boards, it's hard enough to lead. It's a joy to be a pastor and board member and all those things. But there's a dual responsibility that comes that feels like it's in conflict, but they can really go hand in hand very nicely. First, you're pastors. You care for people's hearts. Nobody really wants to ramrod fundraising down somebody's throat. Nobody wants to. Yeah. That's bad. Nobody goes into ministry to be a fundraiser with that. But we are pastors, and finances are a big part of somebody's life and soul, and marriage issues, whatever the issues are. We want to be pastors first, but you got a budget to meet, you got a payroll to meet, you got all the operational issues of a church, a mortgage payment. There's the fiduciary responsibility. And boards and pastors do a dance that, who's really got this? Well, the board sets the budget, right? And we go through and check. But who's really going to, well, we're going to have the treasurer unpack the budget, or the business administrator, executive pastor, but the pastor is not really sure what the role for the pastor is and how does all this. There's no point person really in a church staff or a church board that says, I own this or we own this, and it tends to be put on the shelf until giving goes down and there's that ding, 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 911 button. And okay, it's December and we got to get 38% of our revenue in December again. Probably going to work. It's worked that way for the last 12 years. Okay, we did it again. And we can breathe a little easier with that.
I want to touch quickly on campaigns. We talked about them earlier, very briefly. How do you see campaigns fitting into 2025? Have campaigns changed over the last couple of years? Are they kind of the same as they've always been? What are you seeing out there in the marketplace?
The principles remain the same. The tactics are all over the place in creative ways, and church projects are getting bigger. I got projects from 38 million and 30 million and 15 million. It's not cheap to build a building, and churches are many are feeling the space squeeze. We really got to blow out some walls here, put in more seats, do multi-site, whatever it is. Campaigns I found in 2024 were exceptionally successful, and that's likely to continue. The variables are getting out in front of it well in advance. For a lot of the campaign work that I do, I'm doing the major gift work 4 to 6 months in advance.
When you say in advance, that's before it turns into a public campaign?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That takes the vision for a test drive. It vets it, proof of concept, because you have to make a compelling case to that group. If 70% or more of campaign results are coming from a small group of people, I get to have a test case of the conversations with a small group of people to see if I'm going to get what I need. And I have ample time to make adjustments, or I get early commitments in, cash flow starts to come in, pays for the architect, pays for the GC, pays for the soft costs, the civil work. And it allows the church to work with the construction process to say, yeah, we're pretty sure we're going to be able to go after that and not shrink it because our campaign came in a lower number. Okay. Another distinctive, Morgan, in campaigns is I'm seeing participation rates skyrocket. And whether it is a traditional campaign or a hybrid campaign, people want to be part of something bigger than themselves, but you have to ask it and walk it through the process in a particular way to do that. I've been very encouraged over the success of the dollars. I've been more delighted over the high percentage participation. It's really cool to see. So
you've seen that increase over the last couple of years?
Yep. If it's communicated and not in, it's less of a traditional capital campaign where everything's squeezed together in 4 or 5 weeks, but over time, my perspective is the best capital campaigns now are not 6 weeks long, but they're more like 6 to 8 months long, with all this prep work and all the early commitment work and dripping out the vision, making sure leaders are in sync, vision casting, that people get excited and are more inclined to engage and give. The other piece, Morgan, is helping campaigns is part of when I work with a campaign now, I work first on growing the general giving. For fall of 2025 campaigns, working now on how do you grow general giving, have the right systems in place, getting software like TouchPoint up and running, and the giving outlet or the giving platform there, but engaging people well in advance of the campaign so that when you get to that campaign or project giving season, they're far more inclined to jump in. That's part of the, and by the way, you get to grow your general giving for 6 weeks, 6 months before the campaign. Banks like that. You have free cash flow. What's not to like about increasing giving?
If you grow general giving, maybe you don't have to do campaigns as often, or you never know. Yeah. So, Brett, I knew this was going to happen. We officially have 6 minutes left. I knew you and I start talking about this, and we can keep going. But I do want to open it up to anybody that has questions. Please throw them in the chat. I have a couple more that I'm going to ask you, more popcorn style. We'll keep them pretty quick, and then we'll wrap here pretty quick with how people can get in touch with you and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So while we see if any of those questions can come in, I wanted to ask you something about metrics. And what do you see as the most important metrics that a church should be looking for this year?
Often the least important is what's our giving compared to this time last year, and how's our giving in relation to budget. That's a metric, but other metrics you're looking at are how many first-time givers, and are we growing in that? Are we growing in recurring giving? Are we seeing people take steps in their giving so that those things are measurable? We had 50 families last year that gave more than 10,000. Let's have a goal, a metric of moving that to 70 over the course of the months. Or other metrics would be how you set up an offering rhythm, the tactics that how do you engage in giver communication. Here's a false positive that comes with the wrong metric, Morgan. a church was up significantly in their giving 12, 14%. Everybody, hey, we're up, we're doing great. No, it was because two households gave at a much higher level than they did last year. Everybody else was really tanking. It was a false positive. They didn't look at the metrics that were really going on underneath the surface. They were just looking at top end numbers.
Then we do have, thank you. We do have another question that came in here. I'll answer the first part of it and then turn the second part over to you. The question is, what's the best platform to ask for crypto? And so I would answer that the biggest one out there right now is Given is the name of the company. I'm pretty excited. I believe it's going to be Q2. TouchPoint will be integrated. TouchPoint Giving will be integrated with Given, so we will be able to accept crypto at that time. But it's what most of the major platforms use is Given. So that's the biggest one out there. Then the second part of that question is, should it be targeted? So I believe they're saying, should we talk about and target crypto? And I'll let you answer that one.
Target crypto as in, hey,
as a way for people to donate to the church.
Mm-hmm. The bigger step is to equip what we've worked into the title, inform, inspire, and equip. Is how do you equip people in knowing how to give? So you can give property, you could give crypto, you could give stocks. I've got intellectual property. Yeah, it's how do you normalize and create the systems so that people know that they can give something like an appreciated asset like crypto, and hey, you can give. Usually, all it is we take stocks, we can do crypto, and ding, 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 I have crypto, and they come and have the conversation about how do I give crypto around here. So it's more of an equipping step, Morgan, in how do we normalize on how people can give around here, and that's an education, modeling, training task, and discipling major givers. Where there was a conversation a couple of weeks ago where a couple business owners got together, people got together, and they decided to create an LLC to make money to give to the church. They basically said, we got enough, we're good, but we're really good at business and making money. So we're going to band together and create an LLC, and everything that we make gets plowed into the church. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. But how is it that you can't just wait for somebody to dream that up, but pastors can leak out stories and give little videos and articles of how to spur people on in thinking and how to give creatively.
Yeah, I love the crypto. And for those that don't offer it now or haven't looked at it, it's very cyclical. When crypto's down, you don't see any gifts. It's been down for the last couple of years, and now it's came back over the last 6 months. So you're starting to see those gifts again. I know a couple churches that do 100,000 plus a year in crypto. If for those in your congregation that are doing crypto and have been doing it for a while, they have a lot of capital gains in them. And it's one of the most efficient ways for them to cover some of those gains is through donating donating the tokens. So it's definitely something that is worth looking into and researching. With that, let's see. Oh, we have one more question. It looks like just came in, and then we will start to wrap here, Brad. How often should you teach / preach on biblical stewardship? Good question. And what is a good, healthy diet? So how often should we be doing this?
Sure. The whole premise of the question is important to teach and to preach it. But if that's all you do, you're going to starve the congregation. It's a culture. It's how do you handle the offering moments? How do you engage with your weekly email? How do you say thank you to your giver base? How do you send a first-time note to a giver? How do you teach campus pastors how to normalize generosity? When we park it all in the teaching and the preaching side, we starve and cheat all these other areas that can enrich the generosity and stewardship. A common benchmark is a series once per year on giving, because it's not fundraising. It's really, what are the idols that have captured your heart and hand, the grip of your hand over the last 12 months? What's a substitutionary savior other than Christ? Or what did you let leak out in your personal spiritual development? And it's faith and finances are, I think, one of the easier ways to identify and to work through what's really capturing the heart these days, other than Jesus.
Absolutely. Well, in the beginning, we talked about the analysis that you do. I believe you put together something regarding that. Stephanie, there we go. Do you want to
There you go.
talk about this for a second, Brad?
Yeah, it's my colleague, Melissa. Scan the QR code and she'll get back to you.
And everybody loves Melissa.
Yeah, it's she's probably on the call. So yes, Melissa, I heard again today how wonderful you are. We take giving data confidential. We don't like to see names. We do see giver IDs, and we ask for a certain format of the giving data, and then we turn that around into a one-page table summary of what's really going on in your giving. I love doing it. If I could figure out a way to do this every day, I'd do it. It's so much fun, and it exposes and helps church leaders to see what's going on and how to craft a plan to change what we find in their giving snapshot there. There's a lot, Morgan, of uh-oh moments.
Yeah.
And a lot of aha moments that come with that. And because of our relationship with TouchPoint, be happy to do a giving analysis for you. You would get a request to give us the data in a particular way, and then we would set up a video call for a 45-minute debrief on what we find. And then that call is recorded, given to you. You can share it with your board, you can share it with the staff, whatever it would be. Just keep it for yourself. But it's very, very insightful. And particularly early in the year, I can help you think through, here's what you might consider through 2025, so that when you get to the end of the calendar, you're in much better shape.
Perfect. Everybody should take Brad up on that. And it's free, and you get a lot of data out of it. So don't let that one slip by. Brad, as always, sir, greatly appreciate you. Enjoyed our time together.
Thank you. And thanks. Love the team at TouchPoint. You guys are fantastic. You serve churches so well, and privileged to come alongside TouchPoint.
Everybody, thank you for joining, and look forward to talking to everyone soon. Bye now. Have a great day.